Joining us now on the hotline, longtime NBA insider, Fox Sports 1. NBA insider, you can follow him on Twitter at Ric Bucher. That is at Ric Bucher.
I do want to talk about like the Lakers. So look, we both know people in that organization. Kind of weird. I know they go and beat the Nets with their backups. Kyrie gets thrown out. So does Schroeder. It looks like they're all going to be back healthy and play before the end of the season. But what are they really going to be like? Like what is this team like when it's whole?
You know, what's fascinating to me is that we have the Nets and the Lakers, and to me, they both have they are opposites, but they have the same issue, which is that they are particularly gifted on one side of the ball, but they are a little bit anemic on the other. For the Nets, obviously, it's an amazing offense, amazing offensive players, but defensively, if we're talking about a team that's championship caliber, they're not good enough defensively. Historically, it tells us they're not good enough defensively. And historically, the Lakers are not good enough offensively. And that's where, as we see Andre Drummond play, and kind of the weirdness, I mean, a lot of people made a big deal about how he dominated the Nets, and in some ways he did, but there were a lot of plays where I go, that's not going to fly in a playoff series. Like, you can't get away with that turnover or that move or trying to put the ball on the floor from that place if you're that big man. And so, I think I get the general impression that people are just anticipating a Lakers-Nets final. And unless something happens for them on their respective weak side of the ball, I don't see them getting there. And again, I'm just going based on history. You have to be more of a balanced team between offense and defense to win a championship than either of those teams have demonstrated to this point.
So, Rick, when it comes to the Lakers, how do you slot them in the Western Conference now? Like, are they still the team when they're healthy? I can expect it, or is this where, hey, really, when you get into the playoffs, there's 2 or 3 teams that they're probably going to have real difficulty beating?
Yeah, I believe that even with Andre Drummond, they're still going to have an issue with size. And obviously, we see a couple teams out there, and there's no accident that Denver loaded up on size. There's no accident that Utah didn't make any moves and believes that they can win with what they have. There's no accident that the Clippers added a DeMarcus Cousins. The teams have recognized that if we're going to beat the Lakers, this is one of the elements that we have to have. And one of the things that made the Lakers so potent last year is that they could play both big and small.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that they were very versatile. I don't feel they're as versatile this year. Now, if you're asking me which between what the Lakers have and the Nets have, I'm still going to go with the team that is defensively oriented. I just believe in the postseason that's going to get you further. I think we saw a little bit of that with the Nets in this game. I mean, it's hard to take anything away from it. It's a regular season game. Both teams were missing a lot of players. But the game's going to generally get slower and more physical, and you're going to be allowed to play that way. And that's my biggest question with the Nets is, can they handle it when the pace slows and the game gets more physical? With the Lakers, my only hesitation is like I can't. One, I pointed to that one team last year that I thought was going to be able to take them down, and that was the Clippers, and obviously got singed by taking that. Do I look at that one team and say they're the team that can knock them off? I believe the Clippers are a better team. I believe that they are motivated from last year. So push came to shove, I would say, I think this is a different Clippers team. Now, I may get burned again by saying that. But when I look at the way they're playing, particularly now, I think more than anything, even compared to last year, they are taking a pride in how they play defense. Kawhi Leonard in particular is taking pride in getting back to being the defensive player that we think he can be. And I love the way the ball is moving, and I only think that Rajon Rondo is going to help that. When the ball gets stuck with Kawhi, and Kawhi thinks I'm the offensive engine with this team, they are not at their best. But they've been playing a different way, and that's why whether it's Denver, it's Utah. Here's the other thing: the Lakers are not going to be coming from a position of strength. There's a very good chance that they're going to have to work their way up through the play-in games. And that's going to take just a little bit more out of them than we saw last year. So obviously, I still think they're the team to beat, but I think they are more beatable this year than they were last year.
No, listen, and here's what's interesting about it. Everybody wants to point to the Clippers collapse last year, and I do think that quarantine, the bubble, had a bunch to do with it. I don't think they were a perfect team, but it was also the first year of that team together. Does anybody do we not remember what the Lakers looked like at the end of LeBron's first year? Let me refresh your memory, okay? Magic Johnson quit before the last game of the season, but that wasn't even the worst part of the year. The worst part was that LeBron quit on the team well before that, right? Remember, he was out, he was hurt after they won on Christmas Day, and then he came in with a glass of wine, which everyone thought was a horrible look and horrible idea except LeBron sycophants. And then he wanted the whole team traded so he could get Anthony Davis. So they all quit on him. And then there's the awful visual. Like, my point is that, yes, it looked bad at the end of the year for the Clippers to not even get a chance to play the Lakers. But that's what sometimes these first-year super teams, it's really hard to get everybody on the same page, especially it's not just the way the Clippers went about it. It's true anywhere. LeBron didn't win his first year in Miami, his first year back in Cleveland, his first year in L.A. It stands to reason that the Clippers made some adjustments. I love the Rondo trade. Even though I'm not a huge Rondo guy, everybody with the Lakers last year was like, that's a really good move. He's exactly what they need, and that's not what we need them having. So I'm with you on it. Let me get to the confounding team of all confounding teams. Last night was amazing for the Celtics. They go on a 31-3 run against the Nuggets. Do we have any idea what the Celtics are?
No, look, I mean, I don't think they're last night's team. I don't think this means that they're suddenly a title contender. I believe that there is a certain degree of pride there, and it's probably more a reflection of the Nuggets and their Achilles heel in terms of, Jokic just, sometimes there are matchups that when he doesn't have it going, they completely come apart. And his numbers were still really good, but there's still an element with the Nuggets, with the Michael Porter Jr. balance. And I feel like there's two personalities there. And I know what personality, almost the personnel and the personality and Mike Malone's personality. I like Tom Thibodeau and Mike Malone, I think, are of the same ilk, and they want the same type of player. And Mike Malone wants the grinders. He wants the Jimmy Butler types. And you got some key players on the Denver Nuggets team that are not grinders.
No,
they are not.
Michael Porter Jr. is not a grinder. No.
And you know what? And Jokic has become one more so than before, but even he is kind of a finesse big. And so I feel like that dynamic is the tricky part here when it comes to the Nuggets and what they're capable of and where they go. And I mean, it's been a bad year. It's been a disappointing year for the Celtics. And every once in a while they're going to rear their head and say enough is enough. But I just don't think it's sustainable because their best players are not leaders and they don't have enough physicality. So every now and then a team's going to get fed up with what they've done, but it's not sustainable. And that's what I see with the Celtics.
He's on Twitter at Ric Bucher. That is at Ric Bucher, Fox Sports 1, analyst and insider. His new book, Rebound, with Brian Grant, available right now. Check him out on Twitter for a chance to win a 1 of 10 autographed copies of the book as well. Rick, as always, buddy, great stuff, man. We'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure, guys.
All right. So are you on board, Doug, with the Clippers? Hey, this is the team. Hey, the first year we overrated them the first year. We're underrating them now.
We didn't overrate them the first year. We didn't. They were. I mean, I don't know how you rated them. Like, I thought they were really good. I don't think the bubble gave us a true. Okay, there's a bunch of things. Like, look, the Lakers weren't in a good place in the bubble. They weren't. And then the protest happened because of the what awful happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And they got 2 games off because of it. And it kind of recharged them. They get through their series, and now they get Houston, who they match up well with. Houston couldn't beat them because they could only play small. And meanwhile, the Clippers lose their series, and all of a sudden the Lakers are like, dude, we can win this thing. Let's go. And their families arrived right after as well, which kind of recharged them. Where the Clippers just kind of fell apart, and they didn't have a point guard. They didn't have rim protection. So, whereas, like, here's an example. Like, you bring in Andre Drummond. That's awesome. Okay, what happens to Montrezl Harrell's numbers and minutes? Now that you have Andre Drummond, you get Anthony Davis back, you got LeBron James. You got, like, how does he play as well with fewer opportunities that he's going to have, because you got more mouths to feed? Everybody thinks more is more, and sometimes less is, in fact, more. So I don't know where you ranked the Clippers last year. I think they're a legit title contender. I think it's reasonable to say the Lakers are still the favorite because they got LeBron and because they did it, and defense does, in fact, win championships. But I think the Clippers are the 1B to me to the 1A, which is the Lakers.